When he offered to save her son's life, she said one word that shocked him. No. A paralyzed billionaire CEO sat alone in a Chicago cafe, abandoned and unseen, until one stranger chose to sit beside him. She didn't care about his wealth, and he had no idea she was fighting a battle far greater than his own. One quiet moment would connect two broken lives, uncover a painful truth, and lead to a decision that would change everything forever. The rain came down in thin silver lines, streaking across the tall glass windows of the cafe like quiet tears. Outside, Chicago moved on as it always did. Cars hissing through wet streets, headlights blurring into ribbons of white and red. Inside, everything felt slower, softer, warmer. The low hum of conversation, the faint clink of spoons against porcelain, the golden glow of overhead lights. It was the kind of place people came to feel seen. Daniel Brooks sat alone at a table near the window. His coffee had gone cold. He hadn't touched it in 15 minutes. The chair across from him was empty. Still, he kept his eyes fixed on the door, like something inside him refused to accept what had already happened. The faint scent of roasted beans hung in the air, mixing with the damp smell drifting in each time the door opened. Every time it did, his gaze lifted just a fraction, hope flickering, then dying again. She wasn't coming back. He knew that now. A few minutes earlier, she had stood right there, beside the table, adjusting her coat with nervous fingers. Her smile had been tight, forced. She hadn't even sat down long enough to finish her drink. "I didn't realize," she had said, her voice trailing off as her eyes dropped, not to his face but lower, to the wheelchair. "I think I made a mistake." No anger, no cruelty, just quiet discomfort. The kind that hurt more because it tried so hard to be polite. Before he could say anything, before he could even gather the words, she was already stepping back, already turning away. The bell above the cafe door had chimed softly as she left, swallowed by the rain outside. And that had been it. No explanation, no second glance, just absence. Daniel sat there now, his hands resting loosely on the armrests of his chair, fingers still. His reflection stared back at him from the window, sharp suit, clean lines, the faintest shadow of fatigue under his eyes. A man who had built a company from nothing. A man who had signed deals worth more than most people would earn in a lifetime. A man who couldn't get someone to stay for coffee. Around him, life continued. At the next table, two young professionals laughed over something on a phone screen, their voices light and easy. A couple near the counter leaned close together, sharing a pastry, their shoulders brushing like it was the most natural thing in the world. Even the barista behind the counter moved with quiet confidence, calling out orders, smiling at familiar faces. No one looked at him directly, but he could feel it. The glances that lingered just a second too long before sliding away. The careful way the waiter had approached his table earlier, overly polite, overly gentle, as if Daniel might break under the weight of a normal conversation. Pity had a sound. It was soft, careful, wrapped in good intentions, and it was everywhere. Daniel shifted slightly, the faint mechanical hum of his chair almost drowned out by the rain. He reached for the coffee, hesitated, then pulled his hand back. It didn't matter. Nothing about this moment could be fixed with a warm drink. He exhaled slowly. There had been a time when rooms changed when he walked into them, when people leaned in, eager, attentive, when his presence carried weight that had nothing to do with sympathy. That was before the accident. The memory flickered at the edge of his mind, sharp and unwanted. The screech of metal, the blinding white of impact, the silence that followed when everything stopped moving. He pushed it down the way he always did, burying it beneath years of discipline and control. But moments like this had a way of digging it back up. Because no matter how much money he had, no matter how many companies he owned, no matter how many people worked under his name, this was what they saw. A man in a chair, a complication, a life that didn't fit into the easy picture they had imagined. The rain tapped harder against the glass. Daniel finally lifted his eyes again, not toward the door this time, but toward the room itself. He let himself really look, at the warmth, at the people who belonged there, at the simple, ordinary connections that felt so far out of reach. His jaw tightened just slightly. He had spent years building something untouchable, something solid, something that couldn't be taken from him. But sitting there, under those soft yellow lights, surrounded by everything that looked like comfort, he had never felt more exposed. A spoon clinked against a cup somewhere behind him. Someone laughed again. The door opened, letting in a brief gust of cold air and the scent of rain. And Daniel Brooks, billionaire CEO, sat alone at a table meant for two. He stared at the empty chair across from him, and for the first time in a long time, a quiet question slipped through the walls he had built so carefully. Was there anyone left in the world who could see him? Not the chair, not the money, just him? The rain didn't answer. It only kept falling. Daniel didn't move. The city blurred beyond the glass, lights stretching into streaks as water slid down in uneven trails. Somewhere in the cafe, a chair scraped lightly across the floor. A door opened, closed. The rhythm of life continued, indifferent to the quiet collapse happening at one small table near the window. He lowered his gaze again, staring at the untouched coffee. Then he heard it. "Mom, why is that man sitting all alone?" The voice was small, clear, unfiltered. Daniel didn't look up right away. He had heard questions like that before, whispered, redirected, softened by embarrassed parents, usually followed by a quick apology, a gentle tug of a child's hand, a retreat. But this time, there was no immediate hush. No, don't point. No, that's not polite. Just silence. Then a woman's voice, low and tired but steady. "I don't know, baby." A pause. "But sometimes, people sit alone even when they don't want to." Daniel's fingers tightened slightly against the armrest. Footsteps approached. Soft. Measured. Not hesitant, but not careless either. When he finally lifted his eyes, he saw them. A woman stood beside the table, rain still clinging to the shoulders of her worn gray coat. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few damp curls escaping near her face. She looked tired in a way that rests deeper than just the end of a long day, like sleep hadn't fully reached her in years. Beside her stood a little boy, maybe 6, clutching a small toy car in one hand. His eyes were wide, curious, unafraid. They didn't look like they belonged in a place like this. Not because they didn't fit, but because the world rarely made room for people who carried that kind of quiet weight. The woman hesitated just a fraction of a second. Then she did something no one else in the room had done. She pulled out the chair. "Is this seat taken?" she asked. Her voice was simple, direct. No pity in it. No hesitation that tried to disguise discomfort. Just a question. Daniel blinked. For a moment, he didn't respond. Not because he didn't understand, but because something about it felt unfamiliar. Like a language he used to speak but hadn't heard in a long time. He glanced at the empty chair, then back at her. "No," he said. "It's not." She nodded once as if that settled everything. "Thank you." She sat down across from him, guiding the boy into the chair beside her. The small scrape of wood against tile sounded louder than it should have. drawing a few glances from nearby tables. Daniel noticed. He always noticed. But the woman didn't seem to care. The boy leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table, studying Daniel with open curiosity. "I'm Noah," he said. Daniel found himself answering before he thought about it. "Daniel." Noah nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "You look sad," he said. The words landed without hesitation. Daniel let out a quiet breath, something between a laugh and something heavier. "I suppose I do." The woman shot Noah a look, not sharp, not scolding, just a quiet reminder. "People don't always say things like that out loud," she murmured. Noah frowned slightly. "But you told me to tell the truth." A faint smile touched her lips despite herself. "I did," she said. "Just gently." She looked back at Daniel then, and for the first time there was something like apology in her eyes, but not for being there. "For him," she said softly. "He's still figuring out how the world works." Daniel shook his head. "It's okay," he said. "He might be better at it than most." Noah seemed satisfied with that answer and leaned back, spinning his toy car slowly across the table. The woman reached up, brushing a damp curl from her face. "I'm Tasha," she said. "Nice to meet you," Daniel replied. There was a pause, not uncomfortable but unfamiliar, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled immediately. Outside, the rain softened slightly, tapping instead of pounding. Inside, the cafe continued its quiet rhythm. Tasha glanced at the coffee in front of him. "You're not drinking that," she said. Daniel followed her gaze. "I suppose I forgot about it." She raised an eyebrow. "That's an expensive thing to forget in a place like this." There was no judgment in her tone, just observation. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "Old habit," he said. "Ordering things I don't need." Noah looked between them, then leaned forward again. "Did someone leave you?" he asked. The question hung in the air, sharp, honest, impossible to ignore. Tasha inhaled quietly. "Noah, it's all right," Daniel said, gently interrupting. He met the boy's eyes. "Yes," he said. "Someone did." Noah nodded slowly, absorbing that like it was a fact, not a tragedy. "My dad left too," he said. Tasha's expression shifted, just slightly. There it was, the weight. Daniel glanced at her. She didn't look away. "He left when Noah got sick," she said, her voice steady but thin around the edges. "Some people don't stay when things get hard." The words weren't bitter. They were tired. Daniel leaned back slightly, letting that settle between them. "I suppose we have that in common," he said. For the first time since she sat down, Tasha studied him more closely. Not the suit, not the chair. Him. "What happened to you?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. The question wasn't unusual, but the way she asked it was. No curiosity for the story, no fascination. Just wanting to understand. "Car accident," he said simply. "A few years ago." Noah's eyes widened. "Were you scared?" Daniel considered the question, then nodded. "Yes," he said. "Very." Noah looked down at his toy car, running his fingers over it slowly. "I get scared too," he said. "At the hospital." Tasha's hand moved instinctively, resting on her son's shoulder. "It's not that bad," she said gently. Noah didn't argue. He just shrugged. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Small, quiet, but real. For the first time that evening, the empty chair across from him didn't feel quite so empty. Tasha leaned back slightly, glancing around the cafe. People were watching now. Not openly, but enough. She noticed. Of course she did. But instead of pulling away, instead of shrinking under those eyes, she stayed. People stare, she said quietly, not looking at him. Daniel followed her gaze. They do. They always do, she added. There was something in her tone now, not defensive, not angry, just knowing. Daniel looked back at her. You're used to it, he said. She let out a soft breath. You learn to be. Another pause, but this one felt different, less heavy, less alone. Noah pushed his toy car toward Daniel. You can try, he said. Daniel blinked, surprised. Try what? Race, Noah said simply. Daniel looked at the small plastic car sitting halfway between them. For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, almost cautiously, he reached forward. His fingers brushed the toy, and just like that, something invisible cracked open. He gave the car a gentle push. It rolled across the table, spinning slightly before stopping near Noah's side. Noah grinned. You're not bad, he said. Daniel found himself smiling. A real one this time. Not the practiced kind. Not the one people expected. But something softer. Something human. Across the table, Tasha watched it happen. And for a brief, quiet moment, she didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see a man in a chair. She saw someone who looked like he hadn't been invited back into the world in a long time, and she had just pulled up a chair anyway. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside, something had shifted. Something small, something fragile, something that could still break, or become something else entirely. Daniel leaned back slightly, his hand still resting near the toy car, and for the first time that night, a different question began to take shape in his mind. Not about being left behind, not about what he had lost, but something quieter, more dangerous. What if this wasn't the end of the story? What if someone had just decided to stay? The thought lingered, unanswered, waiting. The word lingered in Daniel's mind long after the thought itself had passed. For years, his life had been built on answers, data, projections, contracts, outcomes. Every decision calculated, every move deliberate. There was comfort in certainty. But this moment didn't come with numbers or forecasts. It came with a small plastic car, a curious child, and a woman who hadn't asked permission to see him as human. Daniel shifted slightly in his chair, the leather creaking softly beneath him. The warmth of the cafe seemed to settle deeper now, no longer just a backdrop, but something he could actually feel. Across from him, Noah rolled the toy car back and forth, occasionally making quiet engine noises under his breath. It wasn't loud or disruptive, just enough to remind the room that a child was present, and that not everything needed to be silent to be respectful. Tasha watched him for a moment, then reached for the paper napkin beside her, folding it absent-mindedly. You don't have to entertain him, she said softly, glancing at Daniel. He's used to keeping himself busy. Daniel shook his head. I don't mind, he said. It's different. Different good? She asked. He considered that. Yes, he said. Different good. Noah looked up as if he had been waiting for that answer. I like this place, he said. It smells like cookies. Tasha smiled faintly. That's because they charge $12 for them, she replied. Daniel let out a quiet laugh. He's right, though, he said. They do smell good. There was another pause, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Tasha leaned back slightly, her eyes scanning the room again, catching the subtle glances from nearby tables. A woman in a beige coat whispered something to her companion. A man near the counter pretended to check his phone while clearly listening. Tasha noticed. She always noticed. But she didn't move. Daniel followed her gaze briefly, then looked back at her. "You don't seem bothered," he said. "About what?" "The attention." She gave a small shrug. "I've had worse," she said. There was no bravado in her voice, just truth. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "What kind of worse?" Tasha hesitated, not because she didn't want to answer, but because she had spent so long choosing which parts of her life were safe to share. Noah saved her the trouble. "Mom works at the hospital," he said proudly. "At night, and in the morning too sometimes." Tasha sighed lightly, though there was no real annoyance behind it. "I work a lot," she clarified. "What do you do?" Daniel asked. "Cleaning," she said simply. "Rooms, hallways, whatever needs it." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's important work." Tasha looked at him then, really looked this time. Most people said things like that out of politeness, out of obligation, a way to acknowledge without actually meaning it. But something in his tone felt different. "You don't have to say that," she replied. "I'm not just saying it," Daniel said. "Hospitals don't function without people like you." She held his gaze for a moment longer than expected. Then she looked away. "Maybe," she said quietly. Noah pushed the toy car again, this time a little harder. It bumped gently into Daniel's hand. "Your turn," he said. Daniel picked it up, turning it over in his fingers. It was scratched in places, the paint worn thin along the edges. Not new, not expensive, but cared for. He set it down and rolled it back toward Noah. "Do you go to school?" he asked. Noah nodded. "Sometimes." Tasha's hand tightened slightly around the folded napkin. "He misses days," she said. "Doctor appointments." Daniel's eyes flicked up. "The hospital you work at?" he asked. Tasha shook her head. "No," she said. "Different one. The free clinic on 8th when we can't get into the main hospital." There was a shift in the air, subtle, but unmistakable. Daniel leaned forward just slightly. "What kind of appointments?" he asked. Tasha hesitated again, this time longer. Noah didn't wait. "My heart," he said, tapping his chest lightly. "It's not working right." The words were simple, too simple. Daniel felt something tighten in his own chest. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. Tasha exhaled slowly. "He was born with a condition," she said. "They caught it early, but—" She paused, searching for the right way to explain it without sounding like she was asking for sympathy. "It's manageable, for now." Daniel nodded. "But it could get worse," he said. Tasha met his eyes again. "Yes." The cafe seemed quieter now. Or maybe it was just that Daniel wasn't hearing the rest of it anymore. He looked at Noah, at the way the boy sat there, completely unaware of how heavy those words were. The way he smiled as he lined up the toy car with the edge of the table like it was the most important thing in the world. "How often do you have to go in?" Daniel asked. "Every few weeks," Tasha said. "More if something feels off." "And the doctors, they do what they can," she interrupted, not harshly, but firmly. "We take it one step at a time." There it was again, that line, that boundary. Daniel recognized it. He had built his life on control. She had built hers on survival. Different paths, same instinct. Noah leaned forward again. "Sometimes I get tired," he said. "Like really tired." Tasha's hand moved instantly, brushing his shoulder. "You're doing great," she said softly. Daniel watched the exchange in silence. There was something about it, something raw and unpolished and real, that cut through everything else. No pretense, no strategy. Just love. He looked down at the table, his fingers resting lightly against the wood. Then he looked back up. "You've been handling all of this on your own?" he asked. Tasha gave a small, almost tired smile. "Is there another option?" she said. Daniel didn't answer right away, because he knew the answer. No, not for people like her. The thought settled heavily in his mind. For a moment he saw it clearly, the gap between their worlds. Not just money, not just opportunity, but access, choices, the ability to say yes to something without calculating the cost in every direction. Noah pushed the car again, this time slower. "Do you have kids?" he asked. Daniel shook his head. "No." "Why not?" Tasha closed her eyes briefly. "Noah." "It's okay," Daniel said quietly. He considered the question, then answered honestly. "I guess I never had the chance." Noah nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "You should," he said. "Kids are fun." Tasha let out a soft laugh. "They're also expensive," she added. Daniel smiled faintly. "I've heard that." Another pause. But this one felt heavier, because something was building beneath it. Something neither of them had said yet. Something that couldn't stay unspoken much longer. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering just a fraction. "There are treatments," he said. "Specialists. Places that can tub." Tasha's expression changed instantly. Not angry, not defensive, just closed. "I know," she said. Her tone was calm, too calm. Daniel stopped. He recognized that shift. He had seen it in boardrooms, in negotiations. The moment someone pulled back, fortified themselves, prepared for what they thought was coming next. "I'm not," he began. "You don't need to fix it," she said gently, but firmly. "We're managing." The words landed like a door quietly shutting. Daniel sat back. He hadn't even made the offer yet. But somehow, she already knew. The rain outside softened again, turning into a faint whisper against the glass. Inside, the warmth remained, but something had shifted. The distance was back. Not as wide as before, but enough. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, at the strength it took to sit there, at the exhaustion she carried like it was part of her skin, at the quiet refusal to be seen as someone who needed saving. And for the first time since they had sat down, he hesitated. Not because he didn't know what he wanted to say, but because he wasn't sure she would let him say it. Across the table, Tasha picked up the napkin again, folding it once more, her hands steady. Noah hummed softly to himself, unaware of the tension that had crept back in. Daniel's fingers curled slightly against the armrest. The words were there, right at the edge. All he had to do was say them. But something told him, the moment he did, everything would change. And not necessarily in the way he expected. He took a breath, and this time, he didn't speak. Because for once in his life, he wasn't in control of what came next, and that uncertainty felt more dangerous than anything he had ever faced. The silence stretched, not empty, not comfortable, but waiting. For the moment someone would finally cross the line, or refuse to. And Daniel realized he wasn't the only one holding that decision. The moment stretched between them, thin and fragile like glass. Outside, the rain slowed to a soft mist, the kind that clung to the air without making a sound. Inside, the cafe seemed to dim slightly as the evening settled in, the golden lights deepening into something warmer, heavier. Daniel leaned forward just a fraction. "I didn't mean to overstep," he said quietly. Tasha didn't look up right away. Her fingers smoothed the folded napkin again, pressing down invisible creases. "I know," she replied, but the distance remained. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't angry. It was something else, something older, something built from years of being on the receiving end of promises that didn't last. Daniel studied her carefully. "You've heard it before," he said. It wasn't a question. Tasha let out a slow breath. "People offering help?" she said. "Yeah." She finally looked at him. "People offering help and disappearing when it gets complicated? Even more." The words were calm, too calm. Daniel felt them settle in his chest. "I'm not—" "I know," she said again, cutting him off gently. "You don't think you are." There was no accusation in her tone. That made it worse. Noah looked between them, sensing something had changed, even if he didn't understand what. "Are we leaving?" he asked softly. Tasha glanced at him, her expression softening immediately. "In a minute," she said. "Finish your drink." He nodded and picked up the small cup in front of him, taking a careful sip. Daniel watched them both. The way her hand rested lightly near Noah's arm. The way she stayed alert without looking tense. The way everything about her seemed to say, "I've learned to expect less, so I won't be disappointed." It wasn't something money could fix. But that didn't stop the thought from rising again. This time he didn't push it down. "Tasha," he said. She looked up. He didn't rush the words. "I wasn't trying to fix your life," he said. "I just don't think you should have to carry all of it alone." The cafe fell into a quiet pocket around them, like the rest of the world had taken a step back. Tasha held his gaze. "And what makes you think I can't?" she asked. There it was. Not anger, not rejection, challenge. Daniel didn't look away. "I think you can," he said. "I just don't think you should have to." A flicker of something passed through her eyes. Not softness. Not yet. But something that paused the automatic defenses. Noah set his cup down. "Mom does everything," he said, as if adding evidence to the conversation. "She works and cooks and helps me with homework and—" "Noah," Tasha said quietly. He stopped, but his expression remained earnest. Daniel looked at the boy. "I believe you," he said. Then he looked back at her. "That's exactly why I'm saying this." Tasha's jaw tightened just slightly. "People always think they're helping," she said, "but they don't see what comes after." "What comes after?" Daniel asked. She leaned back, crossing her arms, not defensive, just steadying herself. "The expectations," she said, "the strings, the way they start looking at you like you owe them something." Daniel frowned. "I'm not asking for anything." "You don't have to ask," she replied. "It shows up anyway." Her voice was still calm, but underneath it, there was something deeper, something that had been tested too many times. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I get that," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" He nodded. "After the accident," he said, "people didn't know how to act around me. Some avoided me. Some stayed. But only because they thought they had to." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's a different kind of debt," he said. "But it still feels like one." Tasha watched him closely, weighing it. Not just the words, but the honesty behind them. Noah reached for his toy car again, pushing it gently toward Daniel like an offering. Try again, he said. Daniel looked down at it, then back at the boy. You're persistent, he said. Noah grinned. Mom says I get that from her. Tasha shook her head slightly, a hint of a smile slipping through despite herself. That's one way to put it. Daniel picked up the car and rolled it back across the table. This time he didn't hesitate. The small motion felt grounding, like something real, something uncomplicated. He let his hand rest on the table afterward. Then he said it. I can help, he said. The words landed heavier than anything before them. Tasha didn't flinch, but she didn't soften either. I know you can, she said. That wasn't the problem. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. I mean it, he said. Specialists, treatment, whatever Noah needs. No. The word came fast, clear, final. Daniel stopped. Noah looked up, startled. Tasha's hand moved to his shoulder again, gentle but firm. It's okay, she murmured to him. Then she looked back at Daniel. I appreciate it, she said. I really do. Her tone was sincere. That made the rejection harder. But we're not taking money from someone we just met, she continued. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because there was nothing in her voice he could argue with. No accusation, no pride for the sake of pride. Just a boundary, carefully built, carefully maintained. You'd rather struggle? He asked quietly. Tasha didn't hesitate. I'd rather know we made it on our own. The words hit harder than she intended, or maybe exactly as hard as she needed them to. Daniel leaned back slowly, the air shifting again between them. The offer had been made. The line had been drawn. And now, there was no easy way to step around it. Noah looked between them again, his small brows pulling together. But what if, he started. Tasha squeezed his shoulder gently. Finish your juice, she said. He looked down, but didn't argue. Daniel watched the exchange. Something inside him tightened. Not frustration, not even disappointment. Something closer to respect. Because it would have been easier for her to say yes, easier to accept, easier to let someone else carry the weight for once. But she didn't. She stayed exactly where she was, holding her ground, even when it cost her something. The cafe door opened again, letting in a cool breath of evening air. Somewhere behind them, a chair scraped, a quiet reminder that time was still moving. Tasha glanced toward the window. It's getting late, she said. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand. Noah picked up his toy car, clutching it in both hands now. Are we coming back? He asked. Tasha hesitated. Just for a moment. Then she looked at Daniel. I don't know, she said honestly. Daniel held her gaze. He could push. He could insist. He could find a way to make it happen. That's what he had always done. But this wasn't a deal. This wasn't a negotiation. This was something else entirely. So instead, he nodded. That's fair. Tasha stood, helping Noah into his coat. The fabric looked thin for the weather. Daniel noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. But he didn't say anything. Not this time. Noah looked at him one last time. Bye, Daniel, he said. Daniel gave a small nod. Bye, Noah. Tasha adjusted her bag over her shoulder. Take care, she said. You too, Daniel replied. Then they turned, walked toward the door. The bell chimed softly as it opened. Cold air slipped in. Then they were gone. Just like that. The chair across from him was empty again, but it didn't feel the same, because this time, someone had chosen to sit there, even if only for a moment. Daniel looked down at the table, at the faint track left behind by a toy car, at the space where something real had existed, and slipped away. He leaned back slowly, exhaling. For the first time in years, he had tried to give something without expecting anything in return, and it had been refused. Not rejected, not dismissed. Refused, on purpose. The distinction mattered, more than he expected. He glanced toward the door. The rain had almost stopped now. The city outside looked clearer, sharper, different, and somewhere out there, a woman who refused to be saved, and a boy who believed in simple truths, were walking away from him. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly on the armrest, because something inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time, didn't want this to be the end. But for now, it was. And that realization landed heavier than being left alone, because this time, he had been the one who couldn't make someone stay. Daniel remained seated long after the door had closed behind them. The bell above it still echoed faintly in his mind, as if the sound had lodged somewhere deeper than it should have. Outside, the rain had thinned to a cold drizzle, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement like broken pieces of gold. Inside, the cafe was beginning to empty. Chairs scraped softly as people gathered their coats. Conversations lowered into quiet goodbyes. The barista wiped down the counter with slow, practiced movements, glancing occasionally toward Daniel's table before quickly looking away again. Daniel didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and it no longer mattered. His eyes rested on the empty chair across from him. Not the one from earlier, the one left behind by someone who couldn't stay. This one was different. This one had been filled, and then chosen to leave. He let out a slow breath, leaning back in his chair. For years he had been surrounded by people who stayed. Assistants, executives, investors, people who needed something from him. They stayed because it made sense, because there was value in it. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, someone had walked away from him without hesitation. Not because she didn't care, but because she did. The thought settled heavily. Daniel reached for his coffee, finally lifting the cup. It had gone completely cold, the bitterness sharper now. He took a small sip anyway, barely tasting it. His phone vibrated against the table. He glanced down. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. All from the same name. Ethan Cole. Board chairman Daniel stared at it for a moment, then let the screen go dark again. Not now. He wasn't ready to go back to that world yet. Not after this. He looked toward the window again. Somewhere out there, Tasha and Noah were walking through the same cold streets, probably heading to a bus stop, or a small apartment tucked into a building that didn't make room for people like them. He could picture it too easily, because once you saw something, you couldn't unsee it. And what he had seen tonight wasn't just their struggle, it was the way they carried it. Without asking, without bending, without letting it define them. That was the part he couldn't shake. Daniel set the cup down. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather wallet. Inside, tucked neatly between cards and receipts, was a folded piece of paper. He opened it. A list of names, hospitals, specialists, programs his company funded, or used to. He stared at the page. For years, these had been numbers on reports, lines in a budget, decisions made in rooms far away from the people they affected. He had approved them without thinking twice. Adjusted funding, redirected resources, cut losses. He had told himself it was necessary, efficient, smart. But sitting there now, thinking about Noah's small hand tapping his chest. I get tired sometimes. The words didn't sound small anymore. They sounded like something else entirely. Daniel folded the paper back up, slower this time. Then he reached for his phone again. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he tapped the screen. The voicemail played. Daniel, Ethan's voice came through, smooth but tight. We need to talk tonight. A pause. This isn't optional. The message ended. Daniel stared at the phone. Then, without thinking too much about it, he called back. It rang once and twice, then. Finally, Ethan said. Where are you? Daniel glanced around the cafe. Out, he said. That's not an answer. It's enough of one. A brief silence on the other end, then a shift in tone. Daniel, Ethan said more carefully, we've been trying to reach you for hours. The board met this afternoon. Daniel already knew what was coming. He could feel it in the weight of the words. And? He asked. Another pause. Then, we're concerned. Of course they were. Daniel leaned back slightly. About what? Your performance, Ethan said. Your presence. Daniel let out a quiet breath. My presence. You've been absent from key meetings, delegating decisions that require your direct involvement. And after what happened last quarter, I handled last quarter, Daniel interrupted. Yes, Ethan said, but not in a way that inspires confidence. There it was. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Say what you mean, he said. Ethan didn't hesitate this time. The board is questioning whether you're still the right person to lead this company. The words landed flat, cold, expected, but still heavy. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. And what do you think? He asked. Ethan sighed. I think we need to have a serious conversation about your future. Daniel looked down at the table again, at the faint scratch marks left by a toy car, at the space where something real had existed, and then moved on. I just had one, he said quietly. What? Nothing, Daniel replied. Silence stretched between them. Then Ethan spoke again, more firmly. We're scheduling a full board review next week. I strongly suggest you prepare. The call ended shortly after that. No argument, no resolution, just another door quietly closing. Daniel lowered the phone. For a moment, everything felt still. The cafe had almost emptied now. Only a few scattered tables remained occupied. The lights seemed dimmer, the warmth less certain. He exhaled slowly. In the span of a single evening, he had been left behind, seen for who he was, refused, and now questioned, not just as a man, but as everything he had built himself to be. Daniel stared at his reflection in the window again. The same man, the same suit, the same life. But something had shifted. Because for the first time, those two worlds didn't feel separate anymore. The one where he had everything, and the one where people like Tasha had to fight for the smallest chance. They had collided. And now, he couldn't pretend he didn't see it. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The city lights sharpened, clear, unforgiving. Daniel reached for the edge of the table, pushing himself slightly back. The chair hummed softly beneath him. He turned toward the door, then paused. Just for a second, because a thought had taken hold. Not loud, not urgent, but steady. He didn't know where Tasha had gone, didn't know where she lived. didn't even know if she would want to see him again. But one thing had become painfully clear. Walking away wasn't enough. Not anymore. Because now, he knew exactly what it felt like. To be on the outside of a world that kept moving without you, and something inside him refused to accept that as the final answer. Daniel moved toward the door. The bell chimed softly as it opened. Cold air rushed in. But this time, he didn't feel it the same way, because somewhere beyond that door was a story he hadn't finished yet, and for the first time in years, he was willing to step into it, even if it meant losing everything he thought he had. The night stretched ahead, wide, uncertain, waiting. The night air was colder than Daniel expected. It settled against his skin in a way that felt sharper after the warmth of the café. The city had quieted, but not completely. Distant traffic hummed, a siren echoed somewhere far off, and the faint rhythm of footsteps carried through the damp streets. Daniel moved slowly along the sidewalk, the soft mechanical hum of his chair blending into the city's pulse. He didn't have a destination. Not exactly. He just knew he couldn't go home yet. Because home meant silence. And tonight, silence felt heavier than anything else. He reached the corner of the block and stopped beneath a flickering streetlight. The pavement was still wet, reflecting the glow above in uneven patches. People passed by, some glancing at him, most not. But for once, their reactions didn't feel like the center of everything. Because his thoughts were somewhere else. With a woman who had walked away, and a child who had spoken without hesitation. Daniel let out a slow breath. He replayed the moment again. No. Not angry. Not cruel, just certain. He had offered something he thought was simple. She had refused it like it was something dangerous. And somehow, that made him question everything. A bus roared past, sending a brief gust of wind across the sidewalk. Daniel turned slightly, watching it disappear down the street. That's when he saw them, across the road, standing under the dim light of a bus stop. Tasha and Noah. They were still there. For a moment, Daniel didn't move, didn't call out, just watched. Tasha stood with her coat pulled tight around her, one hand resting lightly on Noah's shoulder. The boy leaned against her side, his head tilted slightly, fighting sleep but not quite winning. The bus hadn't come yet, or maybe it had already passed. Either way, they were waiting. Daniel hesitated. Something in him said to leave it alone, to respect the boundary she had drawn. But something else, stronger now, refused. He crossed the street, slowly, carefully, each small movement deliberate. The sound of his chair softened by the wet pavement. Tasha noticed him before he reached them. Of course she did. Her posture shifted just slightly, not defensive, not welcoming, just aware. "You followed us," she said. Her voice wasn't accusing, but it wasn't soft either. Daniel stopped a few feet away. "I didn't mean to," he said. "I just saw you." Noah looked up, his face lighting just a little. "Hey, Daniel." Daniel gave a small nod. "Hey." Tasha adjusted her grip on her coat. "You don't need to do this," she said. "I'm not trying to convince you," Daniel replied. She studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Good," she said, "because my answer hasn't changed." The streetlight flickered above them, casting uneven shadows across the sidewalk. For a moment, none of them spoke. Cars passed. Wind moved through the narrow space between buildings. The city continued, unaware of the quiet tension holding three people in place. Noah shifted slightly, leaning more heavily against his mother. "I'm tired," he murmured. Tasha's hand moved instinctively, brushing his hair back. "I know, baby," she said softly. Daniel watched the exchange. Something about it hit differently out here, in the cold, without the soft lighting and quiet music of the cafe to soften the edges. This was real, unfiltered, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. "When's the next bus?" he asked. Tasha glanced at the empty street. "It should have been here 10 minutes ago." Daniel nodded. "Do you have a ride?" She shook her head. "We'll be fine." The words came automatically. Daniel recognized that too. The reflex to say we're fine even when things weren't. Noah looked up again, blinking slowly. "Mom," he said, his voice quieter now. "My chest feels weird." Everything changed. Instantly. Tasha's entire body went still. "What kind of weird?" she asked, her voice calm, but tighter now. Noah pressed his hand lightly against his chest. Like it's too fast." The street felt colder, the air thinner. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "How often does this happen?" he asked. Tasha didn't look at him. "Sometimes," she said. "It passes." But her hand stayed on Noah's shoulder. Firm, grounding. Noah took a slow breath, then another. Daniel watched carefully. Every instinct in him sharpened. "This isn't something you should wait out," he said. Tasha's jaw tightened. "I know my son," she replied. "I'm not saying you don't," Daniel said. "I'm saying he needs to be seen. I'll take him in the morning." "That's too long." The words came out before he could soften them. Tasha looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time, there was something close to anger in her eyes. "You don't get to decide that," she said. Daniel didn't back down. "I'm not trying to decide," he said. "I'm trying to help." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You're trying to fix something you don't understand." "I understand enough." "No, you don't," she said, her voice rising just slightly. Noah shifted again, his breathing uneven now. The tension snapped. Daniel leaned forward. "Then help me understand," he said. "Because standing here and doing nothing—" "I'm not doing nothing!" she snapped. The words cut through the night, sharp, final. A car passed slowly, headlights sweeping across them, then disappearing again. Tasha took a breath, then another. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, controlled. "I've been doing this for 6 years, she said. "Doctor visits, emergency rooms, bills I can't pay. People telling me what he needs like I haven't heard it 1,000 times already." Daniel listened, didn't interrupt, didn't argue. "You think I don't know what's at stake?" she continued. "You think I haven't sat in waiting rooms praying someone would help us without making me feel like I owed them something in return?" The words hung heavy. Noah looked between them, confused. "Mom," she softened immediately, turning back to him. "It's okay," she said gently. Daniel felt something shift again. Not defensiveness, not pride, something deeper. Understanding. "I'm not asking you to owe me anything," he said quietly. Tasha shook her head. "That's not how it works." Noah tugged lightly at her sleeve. "Mom," he said again, softer now. You said when someone is good, we should let them help." The words landed harder than anything else that night. Tasha froze. Her eyes closed briefly. Just a second. But long enough. Noah looked at her, waiting, not demanding, not arguing, just trusting. You told me that, he added quietly. Daniel didn't speak, didn't move, because he knew this wasn't his moment anymore. This was theirs. Tasha opened her eyes slowly, looked down at her son, then at Daniel, then back at Noah. Her breath caught slightly. You're right, she said, her voice softer now, not broken, but changed. Just enough. The wall hadn't fallen, but it had cracked. Daniel felt it. The shift. Small, fragile, but real. Tasha looked at him again, and this time, there was something different in her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but something closer than before. If I say yes, she said slowly, it's not because we need saving. Daniel nodded. I understand. It's because he does, she said, glancing at Noah. Daniel followed her gaze, then looked back at her. Then let's start there, he said. The streetlight flickered again. The bus still hadn't come. But somehow, the waiting had changed. Because now, for the first time that night, the decision had shifted. Not from pressure, not from fear, but from something quieter, something harder, something real. And Daniel realized this wasn't about giving or taking. It was about whether two people from completely different worlds could meet somewhere in the middle and not walk away. This time, the city seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, nothing moved. Not the traffic, not the flickering streetlight, not even the wind slipping between buildings. It was as if the world had paused, waiting for what would come next. Tasha looked down at Noah. His small hand still rested lightly against his chest. His breathing steadier now, but not quite right. The tension hadn't disappeared. It had just shifted into something quieter, something harder to ignore. Then she looked back at Daniel. There was no warmth in her expression, but there was no rejection either, just a decision. We're not going to a hospital tonight, she said. Daniel nodded once. Okay. She watched him carefully, as if expecting resistance. It didn't come. I know a clinic, she continued. It's open late, not fancy, but they know him there. Then we go there, Daniel said. Simple, direct, no argument. That seemed to surprise her more than anything else. You're not going to insist on something else? She asked. No, Daniel said. You said you know what he needs. Her eyes held his for a moment longer. Then she nodded. All right. The word felt small, but it changed everything. Noah looked between them, his tired eyes flickering with something like relief. Are we going now? He asked. Tasha brushed his hair back again. Yeah, baby, she said softly. We're going now. Daniel turned slightly, scanning the street. A black sedan sat parked just beyond the corner, its engine running low and quiet. The driver noticed him immediately. The door opened. Tasha's eyes narrowed just slightly. You had a car the whole time? She asked. Daniel hesitated. Yes. And you didn't say anything? I wasn't sure you'd accept it. She studied him again, this time differently, less guarded, more calculating. Guess you were right, she said. There was no accusation in it, just acknowledgement. Daniel gestured toward the car. Let me take you, he said. Tasha looked at the distance between them, the street, the waiting, the long road she had been walking alone for years. Then she looked at Noah, and that was enough. All right, she said quietly. They moved toward the car together. The driver stepped aside without a word, holding the door open. Noah climbed in first, his small body sinking into the seat like it was something he wasn't used to. Tasha followed, keeping one arm around him instinctively. Daniel maneuvered himself in last, the movement practiced, controlled, but never effortless. The door closed. The city shifted outside the window as the car pulled away. Inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no conversation. Just the soft hum of the engine and the occasional splash of tires against wet pavement. Noah leaned his head against his mother's shoulder. "Is this your car?" he asked, his voice already drifting toward sleep. Daniel glanced at him. "Yes." "It's nice," Noah murmured. Then his eyes closed. Tasha adjusted slightly, making sure he was comfortable. She didn't look at Daniel. Not yet. "Where is this place?" he asked. "South Side," she said. "Near the old grocery on Maple." Daniel nodded, relaying the address to the driver. Another silence. But this one felt different, not tense, not empty, just uncertain. Tasha finally spoke. "You didn't have to come with us," she said. "I know." "Then why are you here?" Daniel looked out the window for a moment, watching the city slide past. "Because I saw you. Because I can't pretend I didn't. Because walking away feels worse than being left behind." But none of those sounded right. So he said something simpler. "Because I said I would help," he replied. Tasha let that sit. Then she nodded slightly. "People say things all the time," she said. "I don't," Daniel answered. She looked at him then. Really looked, trying to decide if that was true. Before she could say anything else, Daniel's phone buzzed again, louder this time, more insistent. He glanced down. Same name. Ethan. Again. And again. 5 missed calls now. Tasha noticed. "Work?" she asked. "Something like that." "You should answer it." Daniel hesitated. The phone buzzed again. He let it. "I can call them back later," he said. Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Must not be that important then." Daniel almost smiled. "It is." "Then why are you ignoring it?" He didn't answer right away, because the truth felt complicated. Finally, he said, "Because this matters more right now." The words surprised even him. Tasha didn't respond, but something in her expression shifted again. Not trust, not yet, but something that wasn't there before. Respect. Just a little. The car turned onto a narrower street. The buildings changed, less polished, more worn. Streetlights dimmer, windows darker. Daniel noticed everything. The cracked sidewalks, the faded signs, the quiet tension that settled into places people didn't choose but ended up in anyway. "This is it," Tasha said. The car slowed, then stopped in front of a small building with a flickering sign. "Clinic. Walk in open." The word open blinked unevenly, like it was struggling to stay alive. Daniel looked at it, then at Tasha. "This is where you come?" "Yes." He nodded. No judgment, no comment, just understanding. The driver stepped out, opening the door again. Tasha helped Noah first. He stirred slightly, his small hand gripping hers tighter. Daniel followed, the cool air hitting him again as he stepped onto the sidewalk. For a moment, they stood there. 3 people, from completely different worlds, on the same cracked piece of pavement. Tasha adjusted Noah's coat. Then she looked at Daniel. "This doesn't change anything," she said. Her voice was steady, clear. "This is just tonight." Daniel met her gaze. "I understand." She studied him, as if trying to see how much of that was true. Then she nodded. "Good." They walked toward the clinic together. The door creaked slightly as it opened. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A receptionist looked up briefly, then back down at her paperwork. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and something older, something worn. Tasha stepped forward. "We need to see someone," she said. The receptionist nodded, sliding a clipboard across the counter. "Fill this out." Routine. Normal. Unremarkable. Except it wasn't. Because this time, Daniel was standing beside her. Not in front, not above, beside. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure what would happen next. Not in the boardroom, not in his company, not even in his own life. But here, in this small clinic, with this woman and this child, something had already begun to change, and there was no going back, even if everything else was about to fall apart. The clinic's fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a pale, almost sterile glow across the narrow waiting room. The walls were a tired shade of off-white, marked by years of use. A television mounted in the corner played muted news footage no one was really watching. Tasha sat beside Noah, her arm wrapped around him as he leaned into her, his breathing steady but shallow. His small fingers curled into the fabric of her sleeve like he was anchoring himself to something solid. Daniel sat across from them. For once, he didn't feel out of place because of the chair. He felt out of place because of everything else. The room was filled with quiet resilience. A woman holding a coughing child. An older man staring down at his hands. A nurse moving quickly between doors, her steps practiced and tired. No one here was waiting for convenience. They were waiting because they had to. Daniel's gaze drifted to the front desk, where Tasha's clipboard still sat half-filled. He had watched her hesitate before writing certain things. Income, insurance, emergency contact. The kind of details that didn't just describe your life. They exposed it. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked quietly. Tasha didn't look up. "Long enough," she said. That was her way of answering without opening the door too wide. Daniel nodded. Noah shifted slightly. "Mom," he murmured. "I'm right here," she whispered. His breathing steadied again. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Does he always—" "Not always," she said, cutting him off gently. "But enough." A door opened across the room. A nurse stepped out. "Noah Williams?" Tasha stood immediately. "That's us." Daniel moved too, instinctively. Tasha glanced at him. "You don't have to come in." "I know." A pause, then, "But I will," he said. She studied him for a second, then nodded. "All right." They followed the nurse down a narrow hallway. The walls here were lined with faded posters about heart health and nutrition, corners curling slightly with age. The room they entered was small, clean, but worn. Noah climbed onto the exam table with help, his small frame looking even smaller against the white paper sheet. The doctor entered a few minutes later, mid-50s, calm eyes, tired but kind. "Evening," he said, glancing at the chart. "Noah, right?" Noah nodded. "Hi, Dr. Harris." The doctor smiled. "Well, look at that. You still remember me." Tasha stood close, arms crossed lightly, not defensive but ready. He said his chest felt off, she explained, like it was beating too fast. Dr. Harris nodded, already reaching for his stethoscope. Let's take a look. The room quieted. The steady rhythm of the exam filled the space. Listening, checking, measuring. Daniel watched everything, not as a businessman, not as someone in control, but as someone who didn't know what the outcome would be and couldn't influence it. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. Dr. Harris stepped back after a moment. No immediate danger, he said calmly, but his heart rate is elevated. We need to monitor it. Tasha exhaled slowly. Is it getting worse? She asked. The doctor hesitated. Just slightly, Daniel noticed. Yes, doctor. Yes, Harris said. Gradually. The word landed heavily. Gradually didn't mean safe. It meant time was running in a way no one could measure. Tasha nodded once, absorbing it. What do we do? Dr. Harris glanced at the chart again. There are options, he said. Specialists, advanced procedures, but he stopped, because they both knew what came next. But they're expensive, Tasha finished quietly. The doctor didn't deny it. Daniel stepped forward slightly. How expensive? He asked. Dr. Harris looked at him for the first time. Really looked, taking in the suit, the posture, the presence. Then he named a number. It hung in the air. Heavy. Impossible. Tasha didn't react, because she had already heard it before. Daniel did. And for the first time, the scale of the gap between their worlds hit him fully. Not as an idea, not as a statistic, but as something real, something immediate, something standing right in front of him. This can't wait, Daniel said. Tasha's head turned sharply. We've been waiting, she replied. Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried weight. Years of it. Daniel met her eyes. You shouldn't have to. There it is again, she said quietly. The tension returned, sharper now, more fragile. Dr. Harris stepped back slightly, sensing the shift. I'll give you a moment, he said, exiting the room. The door closed softly behind him. Silence filled the space. Noah looked between them. Am I in trouble? He asked. Tasha moved instantly. No, baby, she said, her voice warm again. You're okay. He nodded slowly. Daniel watched her. The way she switched so quickly. Strong, soft, steady, everything at once. Then he looked at Noah, at the small rise and fall of his chest, at the quiet strength it took just to sit there. And something inside him refused to stay quiet any longer. Tasha, he said. She didn't respond. Not yet. I can take care of this, he continued. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. No. The word came faster this time, stronger. Daniel didn't stop. I'm not talking about charity, he said. I'm talking about making sure he gets what he needs. That's the same thing, she replied. It doesn't have to be. It always is. The words collided, harder now, because this wasn't theoretical anymore. This was real, immediate, unavoidable. Daniel took a breath, then said something he hadn't planned. Do you know who I am? The room went still. Tasha's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Should I? She asked. Daniel held her gaze. I'm Daniel Brooks, he said. Brooks Industries. The name settled into the room, heavy, familiar. Tasha blinked once, then again. Something clicked. Not recognition of a face, but recognition of something else. A memory. A letter. A rejection. Her expression changed. Slowly, deliberately. You, she said. Her voice dropped. You're him. Daniel frowned slightly. Him? Tasha stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like distance. Real distance. The company that denied his application, she said, her voice steady but cold now. The one that said we didn't qualify. Daniel's chest tightened. What? She shook her head, a bitter edge creeping in. We applied for assistance last year, she said, through one of your programs. Daniel's mind raced. Programs, funding, applications, things he had approved without ever seeing the faces behind them. They said no, she continued, said the funds were allocated elsewhere. The words landed like a weight, and suddenly, everything shifted. Because now, he wasn't just someone offering help. He was someone who had already failed them, without even knowing it. Tasha looked at him differently now, not as a stranger, not as a man trying to help, but as something else entirely. You don't get to come in now and play hero, she said quietly. The room felt smaller, tighter. Daniel didn't move, didn't defend himself, because he couldn't, because she wasn't wrong. And in that moment, the truth was no longer something abstract. It had a face, a name, a child sitting on an exam table, trying to breathe through something he didn't understand. Daniel swallowed slowly, and for the first time, he didn't know what to say, because no amount of money could erase what had already happened, and something told him. This was only the beginning of what he was about to lose, or finally understand. The room felt smaller than it had just minutes ago. The fluorescent lights hummed louder. The air pressed in closer. Even the soft rustle of paper beneath Noah felt sharp against the silence. Tasha didn't move. She stood there, arms at her sides now, not crossed, not defensive, just still. But her stillness wasn't calm. It was distance. The kind that didn't need walls, because it had already decided not to let anything in. Daniel looked at her, searching for something, anything that might soften the moment. But it wasn't there. Not anymore. You're saying, he began carefully, my company denied his care? Tasha let out a quiet breath. Not surprised, not emotional, just tired. I'm saying we applied, she said, and we got turned away. Her eyes met his. And now you're standing here acting like you're the answer. The words weren't loud, but they landed harder than anything else. Daniel shook his head slightly. I didn't know. That was the truth, but it sounded weak the moment it left his mouth. Tasha's expression didn't change. You should have, she said. No anger, no accusation, just fact. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. I don't see every application, he said. There are systems of... Exactly, she cut in. That was the closest she had come to raising her voice. Systems. She took a step back, and people like us get lost in them. Noah looked between them, his small face confused now. Mom, what's going on? Tasha's entire posture shifted instantly. She turned to him, kneeling slightly so her eyes were level with his. Nothing you need to worry about, she said gently. We're okay. But he didn't look convinced. Daniel watched the moment carefully, the way she softened for him, the way she held everything together even when it was slipping. And suddenly, he saw it. Not just the struggle, but the cost of it. Every decision, every rejection, every closed door. It all led here, to this moment, to this room, to this distance between them. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Tasha, let me fix this. The words came out instinctively, and immediately, he knew they were wrong. Her head lifted slowly. Fix it? She repeated. There was something in her voice now. Not anger, not yet, but something close. You think this is something you can fix? She asked. Daniel didn't answer right away, because the truth was, he had always believed that. Money solved problems. Power created options. Influence opened doors. That was the world he knew. But standing here, looking at her, he wasn't so sure anymore. I can try, he said. Tasha shook her head slowly. That's not enough. Her voice was quiet again, but firm. You don't get to try now, she continued. Not after we already needed you. The words hit deeper than anything before, because she wasn't rejecting his help. She was rejecting the timing of it, the idea that help only showed up when it was convenient. Daniel swallowed. I'm here now, he said. Tasha stood fully again. And we've been here the whole time. Silence filled the space again, thicker now, heavier. Noah shifted on the table, his legs swinging slightly. I don't like this, he said quietly. Tasha turned back to him immediately. I know, baby. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. I didn't know about your case, he said, his voice lower now, but I can make sure it gets approved. Tasha didn't even hesitate. No. The word was final. Daniel blinked. Why not? Because that's not how this works. It could be. It shouldn't be. Their eyes locked again. This time, there was no softness left. Just truth. You don't get to skip the system just because you're the one offering help, she said. Not when that same system told us we weren't worth it. Daniel felt the weight of that settle into him. You are worth it, he said. Tasha shook her head. That's easy to say now. A knock sounded lightly on the door. Dr. Harris stepped back in, glancing between them. Everything all right? Tasha nodded quickly. We're done here. The doctor hesitated. We can schedule a follow-up. I'll call, she said. He looked at Daniel, then back at her, then nodded. All right. He stepped out again. The door closed, and that was it. Tasha reached for Noah's hand. Let's go. No hesitation, no looking back, just movement. Noah slid off the table, grabbing his toy car without thinking. He looked at Daniel. Bye, he said softly. Daniel didn't respond right away, because something inside him had gone still. Then, bye, Noah, he said. Tasha didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She turned, walked to the door, opened it, and left. Just like that, Daniel stayed where he was. The room felt too quiet now, too empty, the echo of their presence still lingering in the air. He looked at the door, then at the floor, then at his hands. For a long moment, he didn't move. Because this time, it wasn't someone leaving him because of what he had become. It was someone leaving him because of what he had always been part of. And that was harder to face. Daniel finally exhaled, slow, heavy. Then he turned his chair, moved toward the door. The hallway felt longer now, the lights harsher, the air colder. When he stepped outside, the rain had stopped completely. The streets were quiet, empty, and Tasha and Noah were already gone. No sound, no trace, just absence. Daniel looked down the street, then the other way. Nothing. He was alone again. But it felt different. Because this time, he knew exactly why. He sat there for a moment longer. In the quiet. In the space they had left behind. And for the first time, he didn't reach for his phone. Didn't call his driver. Didn't move forward. Because something inside him, something he had spent years ignoring, was finally starting to speak. Not loud, not clear, but undeniable. You built something that left people behind. And now, you're standing in the middle of it. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. The city stretched out in front of him, cold, unforgiving, real, and somewhere inside it was a woman who refused to be saved, and a child who still believed in simple truths. Daniel tightened his grip on the armrest, because this time, walking away wasn't an option, even if it meant losing everything else, even if it meant facing something he had never had to face before. The truth, and everything it demanded from him. The night had gone still. Chicago no longer rushed around him the way it had before. The noise had thinned. The streets had emptied. The cold settled in, not sharp anymore, but deep, steady, and impossible to ignore. Daniel sat there on the curb outside the clinic longer than he should have, not because he didn't know where to go, but because, for the first time in years, he didn't know who he was going back as. The man who built Brooks Industries? Or the man who had just seen what it left behind? His phone vibrated again. This time he picked it up. He didn't hesitate. "Daniel," Ethan's voice came through immediately, tight with impatience. "Where have you been?" Daniel looked out at the empty street. "Out," he said again. "That's not good enough," Ethan snapped. "We have a situation." Daniel didn't respond right away. Ethan continued. "The board is accelerating the review. They think you've become unpredictable." Daniel almost smiled. Unpredictable. Because he had left a dinner. Because he hadn't answered calls. Because for one night, he hadn't followed the script they had written for him. "What do they want?" Daniel asked. "They want stability," Ethan said. "Control. And right now, they're not sure you can provide either." Daniel leaned back slightly, the cold concrete beneath him grounding in a way his office never had. "And you?" he asked. A pause. Then, "I think you need to remember what built this company," Ethan said carefully. "Discipline, focus, not distractions." The word landed. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "Is that what you think this is?" he asked. "I think you're losing sight of priorities." Daniel let out a slow breath. Because for the first time, he saw it clearly. Their priorities had never been the same. "Then maybe I wasn't seeing them clearly before," he said. Silence. Then, "What does that mean?" Ethan asked. Daniel looked down at his hands, then at the clinic behind him, then back at the street ahead. "It means I'm not ignoring this anymore." Ethan's tone sharpened. "Daniel, whatever this is, handle it quietly. The company doesn't need exposure right now." Exposure. The word echoed. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. "What if it does?" he said. "What?" "What if the problem isn't the exposure?" Daniel continued. "What if it's what we've been hiding?" Ethan didn't answer immediately, because there was no easy response to that. "Daniel," he said finally, "don't do anything you can't undo." The line went quiet. Daniel ended the call. For a long moment, he didn't move, because something inside him had already shifted too far to go back. He turned his chair slowly, moved toward the car. The driver stepped forward immediately, opening the door. "Home, sir?" he asked. Daniel paused, then shook his head. "No." The driver waited. "Brooks Tower," Daniel said. The words felt heavier than they should have, because tonight, that building wasn't just where he worked. It was where everything had gone wrong. The drive was quiet. The city moved past them in long stretches of shadow and light. Neon signs flickered. Storefronts closed. A few late-night diners still glowed, filled with people who had nowhere else to go. Daniel watched it all, but his mind wasn't there. It was back in that clinic, in that room, in the moment when Tasha stepped back and said, "You should have known." He should have. That was the part he couldn't shake. Not the rejection, not the anger, the truth. The car slowed as they approached Brooks Tower. The building rose above everything else, glass and steel reflecting the last traces of the night sky. Lights still burned on several floors, the company never fully asleep. Daniel looked up at it. For years, it had represented everything he had built, everything he controlled, everything he understood. Now, it looked different, colder, more distant, like something that belonged to someone else. The car stopped. The driver opened the door. Daniel didn't move right away, because stepping inside meant facing it, not just the board, not just the company, but everything behind it. He exhaled slowly, then moved forward. The lobby was quiet. Marble floors, high ceilings, soft lighting. The receptionist looked up, surprised to see him at this hour. "Mr. Brooks," she said quickly, standing. "We weren't expecting—" "It's fine," he said, moving past her. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, each floor passing slowly, each second stretching. When the doors opened, everything was still exactly the same. The office, the glass walls, the long conference table, the city stretching out beyond it. But Daniel didn't see it the same way anymore. He moved toward his desk, picked up a folder, then another. Reports, budgets, program allocations, the things he used to trust. He opened one, then another. Numbers, charts, decisions made without faces, without names, without Noah. Daniel flipped through pages faster now, searching, not for confirmation, but for proof. And he found it. Line after line, applications denied, funds redirected, programs cut, all justified, all logical, all necessary. Until they weren't. Until they became this. Daniel leaned back slowly, the weight of it settling in. Not just what had happened tonight, but how many times it had happened before. How many Tashas, how many Noahs, how many people who had stood on the outside, while he signed off on decisions that kept them there. His phone buzzed again, a message this time, from Ethan. Board meeting, 8 a.m. Don't be late. Daniel stared at it, then set the phone down. Because for the first time, that meeting didn't feel like the most important thing in his life. He looked out at the city again, the lights, the distance, the divide, and something inside him settled. Not anger, not regret. Something else. Resolve. Because now, he understood something he hadn't before. This wasn't about one decision or one mistake. This was about everything. And if he didn't change it, no one else would. Daniel reached for his phone again. But this time, he didn't call the board. He didn't call Ethan. He didn't call anyone inside that building. Instead, he opened a different contact list, one he hadn't touched in years. People outside the system, doctors, advocates, names that had once been considered too complicated to involve. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he made the call, because this time, he wasn't asking permission. He wasn't waiting for approval. He wasn't protecting the company. He was choosing something else, something harder, something riskier, something real. The truth, and everything it demanded from him. Even if it meant everything else would have to change. Morning came too fast. The city outside Brooks Tower woke in layers. First the distant hum of early traffic, then the low murmur of voices on sidewalks, then the steady pulse of a business day building itself again from nothing. Inside, everything looked the same. But Daniel didn't feel the same. He hadn't gone home. He hadn't slept. The lights in his office had stayed on all night, casting a pale reflection across the glass walls as he moved from one document to another, one call to the next, one realization to the next. By the time the clock hit 7:58 a.m., he was ready, or at least as ready as he could be. The boardroom doors opened. The room was already full. Ethan Cole stood near the head of the table, his expression unreadable but tense. Around him sat the rest of the board, men and women in tailored suits, faces composed, eyes sharp. They all turned when Daniel entered. The hum of quiet conversation stopped. Daniel moved forward, steady, controlled, the soft mechanical sound of his chair cutting through the silence. "Daniel," Ethan said, nodding once, "glad you could make it." Daniel didn't respond. He didn't take his usual position at the head of the table either. Instead, he stopped halfway down, a subtle shift, but enough to make people notice. "Let's begin," Ethan said, regaining control of the room. "We have concerns about leadership direction, recent absences, and we need to talk about the assistance programs," Daniel said. The interruption landed like a stone in still water. Ethan blinked. "That's not on the agenda." "It is now." A pause. The board exchanged glances. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "This isn't the time." "This is exactly the time," Daniel said. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried. The room stilled again. Daniel placed a folder on the table, opened it, turned it toward them. "Last year," he said, "we denied over 400 applications for medical assistance." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Daniel, programs designed to help families who couldn't afford care," Daniel continued, not looking at him. "Families who met the criteria on paper, but didn't meet the budget." The board shifted, some uncomfortable, some defensive. "All of those decisions were reviewed and approved," Ethan said, "based on financial projections and based on numbers," Daniel cut in. He looked up now, meeting their eyes. "One of those applications was for a 6-year-old boy with a heart condition." Silence. He was denied. A beat. And now he's sitting in a clinic that can't give him what he needs. Ethan's jaw tightened. "This is not how we run this company," he said. "We don't make decisions based on individual cases." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Maybe that's the problem." The words hung there, heavy, uncomfortable, real. Ethan shook his head. "You're letting emotion cloud your judgment." "No," Daniel said quietly. "I'm finally seeing what my judgment has been missing." The room shifted again, tension building, pressure rising. "This company exists to generate value," one of the board members said carefully. "We can't approve every request that comes in." "I'm not asking us to," Daniel replied. He paused. Then, "I'm telling us we've been wrong about how we decide." Ethan stood. "That's enough." His voice was sharper now, controlled, but barely. "You're not thinking clearly," he said. And I won't let you dismantle this company because of one situation you don't fully understand. Daniel looked at him, then said, I understand it better than I ever have. Another pause, then I'm stepping down. The words dropped into the room like something solid, irreversible. The board froze. Ethan stared at him. What? I'm resigning as CEO, Daniel said. No hesitation, no doubt. Effective immediately. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was stunned. You can't be serious, Ethan said. I am. Daniel, this is necessary. The word came clean, clear, and final. Ethan took a step forward. This is your company, he said. You built it. And I built it wrong. The admission cut deeper than anything else, because it wasn't defensive. It wasn't strategic. It was honest. Daniel placed another document on the table. A new fund, he said. Independent, transparent, focused on cases like the ones we've been turning away. The board stared at it. What does this have to do with your resignation? Someone asked. Everything, Daniel replied. He leaned back slightly. For it to work, it can't be tied to the same system that failed. Ethan's expression hardened. And you think walking away fixes that? No, Daniel said. I think it's where I start. The room stayed quiet, because no one had expected this. Not like this, not from him. Ethan exhaled slowly. You're throwing away everything. Daniel looked around the room, at the glass, at the city beyond it, at the place that had defined him for so long. Then he said, No. A pause. I'm finally choosing something else. No one spoke, because there was nothing left to argue. Daniel turned his chair, moved toward the door. No one stopped him. Not this time. The elevator ride down felt different. Not heavy, not uncertain. Just clear. For the first time in years. He wasn't carrying the weight of expectation, only the weight of his decision. When the doors opened, the lobby looked the same, but he didn't. He moved through it without slowing, without looking back. Because something ahead of him mattered more now. The car was waiting outside. The driver stepped forward. Where to, sir? Daniel paused, then said, The café. The driver blinked. Sir? Just take me there. The car pulled away. The city moved around him again. But this time, he wasn't watching it from a distance. He was part of it. And somewhere, not far from where this all started, was a woman who didn't trust him, and a boy who needed more than promises. Daniel leaned back. The decision was made. The cost was real. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of it, because this time, he wasn't trying to hold everything together. He was finally letting something better take its place, even if it meant he had to start over, from the very beginning. The cafe looked different in the morning. The same glass windows, the same soft yellow lights, the same quiet hum of voices, and the faint clink of cups meeting saucers. But everything felt lighter, cleaner, like the night had taken something heavy with it when it left. Daniel sat at the same table by the window, the same one, the one where everything had started. His coffee was warm this time, untouched, but not forgotten. Outside, the city moved with purpose again. People walked faster. Cars lined up at intersections. Life pushed forward the way it always did. Inside, he waited. Not because he expected anything, but because something told him this wasn't finished yet. The bell above the door chimed. Daniel didn't look up right away. Not this time. Because he wasn't chasing the moment anymore. He was letting it come. Footsteps crossed the floor. Soft, measured, familiar. He lifted his eyes. And there they were. Tasha stood just inside the doorway, her coat pulled close, her eyes scanning the room until they found him. Noah stood beside her, holding his toy car in one hand, his other hand wrapped loosely around hers. They didn't move right away, neither did Daniel, because this moment didn't need to be rushed. Then Noah smiled, and that was enough. He let go of his mother's hand and walked toward the table. "You came back," he said. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. "I did." Noah nodded, like that confirmed something important. "We did too," he said. Tasha followed more slowly. Her steps were careful, not hesitant, but deliberate. When she reached the table, she didn't sit. Not yet. She looked at Daniel. Really looked. And for the first time, there was no distance in her eyes. Not the kind that pushed him away. Not the kind that guarded against him. Just something quieter. Something open. "You resigned," she said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Daniel nodded. "Yes." She studied his face, looking for something. Regret. Doubt. Second thoughts. She didn't find any. "Why?" she asked. Daniel glanced at Noah, then back at her. "Because I couldn't pretend anymore," he said. A pause. "Pretend what?" she asked. "That I didn't see what was right in front of me," he replied. The cafe moved around them, unaware, uninvolved. But for a moment, everything felt centered on that table. Tasha exhaled slowly. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know." "Then why?" Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Because you were right," he said. That stopped her. Not because she expected an apology, but because she didn't expect agreement. "I should have known," he continued. "I should have seen how the system worked, not just on paper, but in real life." Tasha looked down for a moment, then back up. "That doesn't change what happened," she said. "No," Daniel agreed. "It doesn't." Another pause. "But it changes what happens next." The words settled between them. Tasha considered them carefully, because she had heard promises before, promises that sounded right, felt right, and disappeared the moment things got complicated. "What does that mean?" she asked. Daniel reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, placed it gently on the table. "I started something," he said. "Outside the company." Tasha didn't touch it. "Why?" she asked again. "Because the company couldn't do it the way it needed to be done." She glanced at the folder, then back at him. "What is it?" "A fund," Daniel said. "Independent, transparent, built to help cases like Noah's." Noah perked up slightly at the sound of his name. "Me?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, you." Tasha's expression didn't soften. Not yet. "And what do you want from us?" she asked. "Nothing." She didn't react, because that answer didn't feel complete. Daniel understood that. "I mean that," he said. "No conditions, no expectations." Tasha crossed her arms lightly. "That's not how things work." "It is now." The words were quiet, but steady. She looked at him, longer this time, trying to see if he meant it, if this was real, if it would last. "What happens when it gets hard?" she asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. It already is. That answer caught her off guard, because it wasn't defensive, it wasn't optimistic, it was honest. Noah reached for the folder. Tasha didn't stop him this time. He opened it slowly, flipping through pages he couldn't fully understand, but could feel the importance of. "Is this for me?" he asked. Daniel nodded. "It's for you," he said, "and kids like you." Noah smiled. Not wide, not loud, just real. Tasha watched him, then looked back at Daniel. Something shifted again. Not all at once, but enough. "You didn't save us," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know." She took a breath, then said, "You saw us." The words landed differently, not as a challenge, not as a rejection, but as something else. Recognition. Daniel felt it. More than anything else that had happened, more than the resignation, more than the boardroom, more than the decision. Because this was real. "Sit down," she said quietly. It wasn't an invitation. It was acceptance. Daniel didn't hesitate. She pulled out the chair, the same one, the one that had been empty before, the one that had been filled and lost and found again. Noah climbed into his seat, placing the toy car carefully on the table. "Race?" he asked. Daniel smiled. "Always." The car rolled between them again, back and forth, simple, uncomplicated, real. Tasha sat down slowly, not across from Daniel this time, but beside Noah. Closer. The distance was gone, not because everything had been fixed, but because something had been understood. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside. 3 people sat at a table, no longer separated by money, or systems, or assumptions. Just people. And for the first time, Daniel wasn't the man who had everything, and Tasha wasn't the woman who had nothing. They were something else entirely. Something built in a moment most people would have walked away from. Something that stayed. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. The coffee grew cold again, but this time, no one noticed, because no one was waiting to leave. They were already where they needed to be, together. And maybe that's what this story was really about. Not money, not power, not even second chances, but being seen when the world keeps looking away. So here's something I want to ask you. If you believe kindness still matters in a world like this, just comment 1 below. And if you've ever felt invisible, but kept going anyway, comment 0. I read every single one. And if this story touched you, don't forget to hit subscribe, because there are more stories like this waiting for you. Stories about people who were overlooked, until the moment everything changed. I'll see you in the next one.